You know, when you see a picture like this, it's easy to think of it as just a single event. But this scene, this has played out thousands and thousands of times all across Spain. It's the quiet aftermath of a huge battle against fire, a conflict that's documented not just in news headlines, but in decades, literally decades, of detailed government reports. And today, we're going to dive right into that data. Hey everyone, today we're going straight to the source. We're going to use over 2 decades of official government data to really decode Spain's wildfires and understand what's really happening when all the smoke clears. So, here's the game plan. First, we'll get a handle on just how big this problem is. Then, we're going to try to find the spark. You know, what's actually causing these fires? After that, we'll look at the massive response effort, the people on the front lines. We'll break down what makes a fire a true catastrophe. And finally, we'll boil it all down to one really crucial takeaway. All right, let's get right into it. To really understand any issue, you first have to appreciate its size. And when it comes to wildfires in Spain, believe me, the numbers are just staggering. Okay, check out this number. This is from the year 2012 alone. In just that 1 year, that's how much forest area burned. To put that into perspective for you, that's an area more than 3 times the size of the city of Madrid, just gone. And while 2012 was a particularly devastating year, it's just one chapter in a much, much larger story. So this table here really puts that single year into a much broader context. You can see how it goes up and down, right? Some years are just absolutely catastrophic. Look at 1994 or 2012, like we just mentioned. Other years are less severe. But the one constant here, the persistence of the problem. Year after year, decade after decade, the fight just continues. And this is where it gets really interesting. It turns out the vast majority of these fires are actually small. The official reports call them conatos. That means fires that burn less than 1 hectare. In 2013, for example, these small incidents made up over 70% of all fires. So what does that tell us? It tells us that most of the time the response is incredibly effective, which raises a huge question. If most fires get put out so quickly, where does all that devastating damage come from? We'll get to that. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit. We've talked about the what, now let's talk about the why. What is actually starting these tens of thousands of fires every single year? So what's the culprit? Well, this chart gives us a pretty clear answer, and you can forget about those dramatic lightning storms. The data from 2008 shows that nearly 80%, 80%, of all fires were started by people, either through intentional acts or just simple negligence and accidents. Nature is barely even a factor here. This is, first and foremost, a human problem. So let's dig into that negligence category for a second. When you look at the reports, you see it's a pattern of just everyday activities gone wrong. We're talking about things like agricultural burns to clear land, sparks from machinery, campfires that weren't put out properly, or even just a discarded cigarette. These are the tiny mistakes that can have absolutely catastrophic consequences. And this is a really crucial point. It is not all accidental. In some areas, the problem is far more deliberate. For instance, in the region of Galicia, the 2008 data shows that over 72% of fires there were believed to be intentional. And that completely transforms the issue, doesn't it? It goes from being just an environmental problem to a really complex social one, with motivations that go way beyond a simple accident. So you've got thousands of human-caused fires sparking up every year. That requires an enormous, highly organized, and honestly an incredibly brave response. This section looks at the data behind that fight. Now, central to this whole response are the BRIF teams. You can think of them as the special forces of firefighting. These are elite brigades transported by helicopter that the central government deploys to reinforce regional efforts, especially when a fire gets too big or too complex for local teams to handle on their own. And to get a sense of their effort, just look at these numbers from the 2006 report for a single year. These aren't just abstract statistics. That's nearly 1,800 hours spent in the air, often in incredibly dangerous conditions. And on the ground, they constructed, by hand, over 224 kilometers of fire line. That's like digging a trench from Madrid to Salamanca just to stop a blaze. It's incredible. And this whole effort is highly structured. It starts with detection, maybe a call from a citizen. Then comes mobilization, dispatching all the units. Now, this first attack part is absolutely crucial. This is where most fires are stopped from becoming major incidents. If that fails, it escalates to a sustained attack with a massive coordinated response,
before finally moving to control and complete extinction. It's a race against time, and it's executed with military precision.
Which brings us right back to that question we asked at the beginning. If the response is so effective at stopping all these small fires, why do we see such massive destruction? Well, the answer lies in a very specific and frankly terrifying category of fire.
So, the crucial point is this official classification, the Gran Incendio Forestal, or GIF for short. Now, this isn't just a big fire. It's a specific government designation for any blaze that grows to consume 500 hectares or more. A GIF is the nightmare scenario. It's what the entire firefighting system is designed to prevent from ever happening. And here is the core paradox of all this data. Get this. In 2013, GIFs made up less than 0.2% of all fires. A tiny, tiny fraction. Yet that minuscule number of fires was responsible for nearly a third of all the forest area burned in the entire country that year. This is where the real damage comes from. It's not from the thousands of small fires, but from the handful that escape control and become absolute monsters. And this table right here shows us the devastating reality behind those numbers. Each line from this 2012 report tells the story of one of these GFs. I mean, look at the fire in Castro Contrigo, Leon, started by an arsonist. It burned over 11,000 hectares. Or the one down in Cortes de Pallars, Valencia. That one was started by machinery, and it burned nearly 29,000 hectares. Every single one of these is its own singular disaster. So we've looked at the scale, the causes, the response, and the devastating impact of these worst-case fires. After digging through all these official reports, what's the single most important thing to take away from all this? It comes down to this number. Across all the years of data, the government's own reports consistently show that over 80% of all forest fires in Spain are caused by us, by human hands, whether it's a deliberate act of arson or just a simple moment of carelessness. And this really leads us to our final thought. The data is unequivocal. We can have the best firefighters, the most advanced equipment in the world, but the reports show again and again that the spark, overwhelmingly, comes from us. So the crucial question isn't just about how we fight fires, but how we prevent them from ever starting in the first place. Because if the problem is human behavior, then the solution has to be too.